I feel a strange sort of relief as I finally divulge this secret, even if the humiliation still lingers because I've hidden it for far too long. After today, my thoughts will be free, even if I'm not proud of what I'm going to admit. Make sure to subscribe before we start if you want to see more powerful real confessions like this one. If you are enjoying the narrative, don't forget to watch it through to the finish and give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate your support. I didn't anticipate feeling its weight as soon as I entered the room. As soon as the mansion appeared, the old building appeared odd, somehow empty. My grandfather John was standing at the doorway when the door cracked open, even though he was a guy in his 60s with years of experience etched on his face. There was something heavier and more troubled about his expression today. He gave me a smile that fell short of his eyes. "It's been too long, Sophie," he remarked, his voice full of warmth and an underlying sadness. I felt the shudder in his palms as I moved into his embrace. He retreated a little, staring off into space as though he were seeing something far away from me. "I'm happy you're here," he added in a quiet voice. "Without her, the past few months have been lonely." I didn't need to inquire about her identity. The emptiness surrounding us still carried the weight of Grandma's death, which occurred a few months earlier. Once resonating with laughter, the house now seemed to have lost the ability to smile. This silence and loneliness were palpable to me, yet I was at a loss for words. "How are you doing?" I inquired, attempting to console him, but not knowing how to heal the hole of sorrow that appeared to have taken hold of his spirit. As I entered the kitchen, I never imagined that I would be back in this place that used to feel like home. The air was filled with the familiar scent of fresh coffee and ancient wood. I thought it would be kind and welcoming like before, but something didn't feel quite right, and I couldn't quite place it. The maid, Kate, was there cleaning the counters. When she spotted me, she smiled, but for some reason, her eyes didn't meet her smile. I couldn't get rid of the impression that she was making an excessive effort to be nice. Since Grandma's death, she had been taking care of the house, and she appeared to have adapted to the task well. But I couldn't help but notice how her eyes would dart to John whenever he came in. I could sense there was more to it than just her saying she was happy I was here to help with the cleaning. There was a lot of tension between her and Grandpa, but I didn't want to draw any conclusions. Despite their brief, courteous conversations, it was obvious that they were not communicating. I didn't ask yet, but even as I made an effort to ignore the uneasy feeling, my interest kept growing. I had no idea that afternoon that I would be out on the golf course. Walking alongside John as we traversed the verdant, wide terrain felt almost unreal. It was only the two of us today, but it had always been his sanctuary, where he had spent many hours honing his skills with Grandma. John's eyes brightened as we began the game in a manner I hadn't witnessed in a long time. He narrated tales of his early years, including how he had learned to play golf while serving as a soldier and how it had been one of his few escapes during those long, exhausting years. His hands, despite their wear and tear, moved with the same accuracy as they had in his prime. As he spoke, I could see the memories in his eyes, a silent pride tinged with grief. He talked about Grandma so lovingly, and I could sense the love that was hidden in every word. I had to teach her grandmother all she knew. He continued laughing. She was my lifelong companion. As I watched him make another pot, I grinned. This was unexpected. He was lively and full of stories, charm, and wisdom, which was not how I had anticipated seeing him, but there was also something more there, something deeper in his eyes. I couldn't ignore it, although it was difficult to locate. When we finished our lunch and went to the back porch, it was a calm day. The yard was bathed in a warm glow as the sun hung low in the sky. With the distant sound of birds chirping, we took our seats in the wicker chairs. I could not help but note how different everything was from the last time I visited the house, the property, and even John himself. The air felt heavy with an unseen weight. He appeared older, although he still retained part of his former self. John sat next to me with his hands on his knees. As he gazed at me, his eyes appeared to soften. His voice was a little unsteady, as though the words were unfamiliar to him. But he added, "It feels good to have someone around again." I tried to grin reassuringly and said, "I'm glad to be here, Granddad," but he suddenly stretched out and embraced me tightly. This time, there was something more about it that made my breath catch in my throat. Even though it was warm and comforting, when he eventually withdrew, he kissed my cheek after holding me for a little longer than normal. I froze because it was so sensitive, almost too tender. I felt confused, but I didn't pull away. I felt a ripple through me, wondering why I felt different. It had been a long day, and I wasn't sure how to interpret the situation. The golf game left my muscles weary in unexpected ways. I sensed the constriction, the stress of attempting to keep up with John, who moved with an elegance I admired despite his advanced age. I attempted to stretch it out as I made my way back to my room, but it didn't help. The tightness persisted, and I knew that without some release, I wouldn't be able to relax. John, always the kind host, knocked on my door at that moment that he remarked softly, "You've got some tension there. Let me assist you." I paused, uncertain. The thought of him touching me in that way was strange, but there was no denying the pain in my shoulders. I tried to lighten the situation by whispering, "I had no idea you were so skilled at this." With a gentle smile, he helped me sit on the bed's edge. He gave me a rather firm shoulder massage, which initially felt fantastic, but as he worked, something happened. He stayed longer than I had anticipated, and I felt a warmth that wasn't what I desired. I couldn't help but feel terrible and oddly attracted to the situation as the distinction between comfort and something else became hazy. But then he did something unexpected. A strong pain in my back was one of the unusual sensations I experienced. It felt fantastic, but I had no idea why he did it. He did indeed, and I adored it. "Grandpa, keep going. Don't stop," I said. He kissed my forehead, and I was left smiling. I returned his smile and said, "Thank you, Grandpa." It wasn't a calm morning. Even though I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside the window, my body still ached from the day before, and I could still feel John's hands on my shoulders. As I lay there with the sunlight coming through the curtains, I couldn't seem to untangle the jumbled thoughts from the previous night. I made an effort to push past the uneasy attraction I had for him. I couldn't understand why the mere notion of his touch made my heart race. Why, in spite of the guilt that was eating at me, did I still remember his kiss? What did we do? The words sounded strange on my lips as I muttered to myself. There was something inside of me that yearned for more, even though this wasn't right. Maybe it was only the connection, the loneliness I attempted to explain. We spent those silent times together. Perhaps I was just perplexed, but I knew in my heart that what had transpired wasn't innocent. I couldn't stop thinking about it because it wasn't simply a loving or caring moment. It was something more sinister that had the potential to alter everything. The weight of everything that had happened was pushing down on me, making the morning feel heavier than usual. The perplexity and the guilt had become too much for me to handle, and I was unable to stay any longer. The pictures from the previous day were circling around in my head, blazing like a film I was unable to put down, knowing that there would be no turning back once I departed. I packed my belongings silently and carefully. I was unable to look, not in the wake of what had transpired, John in the eye. I realized I had no choice but to stay with him even if I didn't want to. I noticed him in the hallway as I was about to leave, standing at the door. At first, he just stared at me with that recognizable melancholy in his eyes without saying anything. My voice trailed off as I muttered, "Goodbye, Granddad." I had to leave, even though I never wanted this to happen. His expression softened, and I briefly believed I saw a tear sparkle in his eye. "I get it." His voice broke as he replied, "Sophie, you have my undying love." I didn't answer, knowing that the damage had already been done. I turned and left the estate after realizing that I couldn't. As I left, the house seemed more empty, as though a piece of it had left with me. The estate seemed to be enveloped in a thick quiet. I felt the weight of my choice pressing down on me at every turn, and I couldn't help but question whether leaving was really the best course of action. Was there any possibility that I could be saved, or had I already gone too far? I couldn't stop asking myself these things, and I'm sure you're wondering too, reader. Was Sophie the correct person to leave? Was running away her only option? Or could she have stayed and dealt with the fallout? If you were her, how would you have responded? For more true confession tales like this one, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I would love to know what you think. What are your thoughts on Sophie's choice? Tell me what's on your mind as you go through this complex web of feelings and decisions. Do you believe that leaving was the only option, or should she have faced the facts head on?